Hey everyone, Andy Rafael from eTeknix.com, and today we're looking at the Gigabyte Z490 AORUS XTREME. Let's do this. The Virtuoso RGB Wireless SE headset from Corsair. With a sleek premium lightweight design, comfortable memory foam ear cups and subtle RGB lighting, it doesn't look like your typical gaming headset. With a detachable broadcast grade microphone, patented slipstream wireless technology and tuned 50mm neodymium premium drivers, it's simply the best headset Corsair have ever created. Find out more by clicking the link in the description below. So before I get started, I do have to put a slight caveat on this video. It's the same on all of our Z490 coverage. Basically, we are filming these videos before we finish testing. So therefore, we are going to have all of the benchmarks, the overclocking, all of that kind of good stuff that you guys are looking forward to at the end of this video. So definitely stick around for that. I guess really we should jump straight into it. Now, the AORUS XTREME kind of range is, I guess, essentially the top of the top, the creme de la creme, the dog's danglies, the bee's knees, the dog's bollocks. Basically, there's only one board, I guess from a premium standpoint, that's higher than this, and that is the AORUS XTREME Waterforce. Essentially, it's kind of the same motherboard, but it has a built-in monoblock that covers pretty much the majority of the top half of the board. Now, when it comes to pricing, that's where things get a little bit interesting. Z490 does have a little bit of a premium to it, and this board is no exception. So when it comes to the pricing on this board, you are going to be looking at a staggering $799.99 in the US and about £750 in the UK. Now, looking at kind of the predecessor, the Z390, which admittedly doesn't look nowhere near as kind of premium and as glorious as this does, there is about a $250 price difference between the launch of the Z390 and then this one. It is worth noting that there is an X570 AORUS XTREME as well, which came in around the same kind of price point as this. So if you're doing kind of apples to apples, AMD to Intel on the high end, you're about the same kind of price. So what do you actually get for that? Well, as I mentioned, you do get pretty decent styling, I've got to admit. So to start with, the board itself, it essentially looks like one giant heatsink. It's pretty much covered from head to toe. The only real area that's not kind of covered is the CPU socket. So we have large heatsinks that pretty much, I guess, kind of join into each other. So the top and the side join into, I guess, this bit at the bottom, which actually seems like it wraps around the board. When you look at the edging of the board, it seems like everything spans across and then goes into this large heatsink that's on the rear. Now that, again, just like the front, pretty much covers the whole board. Again, just around the CPU socket really is the only area that's not covered. And that's to allow you to change your CPU cooler at a later date. You can easily get to that backplate area through the cutout on your case. So admittedly, out of all of these Z490 boards that we've been looking at, this one is pretty much the one where you see the least amount of PCB. Now, color scheme wise, it's pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe vanilla, maybe plain, stealth. It's not going to affect any sort of color decisions that you're going to have. It's not going to affect the theme or the style that you want to go with because there's no ostentatious bright colors. It's black, it's gray, it's silvery. It looks very, very nice. And again, it does look very premium. In terms of the lighting, this is a bit of a weird one. We'd normally actually show what the lighting effects are, but for some reason, Gigabyte, you actually have to take this little panel off down here and connect a proprietary cable to get it to light up without it being in the system. Sadly, we don't have that cable available. But in terms of lighting, it does have an area up here on the rear I/O heatsink, as well as over by the PCH, which it kind of stems down into this angled piece of what looks like perspex or plastic. It looks very, very nice. If you want to extend above and beyond that, then there are two addressable headers and two normal RGB headers. Now, to control all of it, you just simply go into RGB Fusion 2.0 and the world is your oyster. The only other thing that I would have maybe liked to have seen on this board, we've seen it on the ASUS Extreme board as well as the Godlight board from MSI, is they tend to have little screens with readouts that you can put your own little designs and GIFs and stuff like that on them. This hasn't got anything like that. We do have a debug LED, but I just personally would have liked to have seen a screen. I don't know, it just shouts out that you're getting something more for your money, especially when you are spending this kind of money. Now, in terms of clearance around the CPU socket, everything's pretty open in the grand scheme of things. You're not going to have any problem with even the largest of coolers. The only real concern that I've got is just next to the memory, you do have this panel, which is a slightly shifted higher than the rest of the board. So I don't know whether that's going to have any effect in terms of impeding airflow across the VRMs, especially if you're trying to push things to the limit. I guess in the grand scheme of things, if you are trying to push things to the limit, you are going to have extra fans situated around here, especially if you're doing things like LN2. Now, for those who are overclocking, this is going to be something that's going to be of huge interest to you. There's 16 amps and they are a total of 90 amps each. By my calculations, that's a total of 1,440 amps worth of power that can be delivered into the CPU socket and consequently into the CPU. I mean, that's just astronomical. Now, having those features is great, but do they have the rest of the features to back it up? Well, actually they do. This particular board, and Gigabyte make this very, very clear on all of their literature, it has an 8-layer PCB with 2 times copper. What that allows is for the power to be distributed much more evenly, especially through the digital VRM solution, and it just allows essentially temperatures to be controlled just that little bit better compared to if it didn't have these features. Now, to provide all of that power, it does have 2 8-pin connectors up here with solid pin technology. That allows you to get the very best connection from your power supply to give you the very best stability and draw of power. It does also have metal shielding around here to, in my opinion, it does add to the styling, but its main purpose really is for avoiding interference and really just giving you that stable, clean power that you're going to need, especially when you're pushing your hardware to the limits. Now, with that amount of power, you are going to need decent cooling. So it has got a heatsink at the top and a heatsink down the side. Now, Gigabyte have their own patented technology here called fins array, which apparently it basically means that the heatsink has a larger surface area. It does have a heat pipe in here as well and does have direct touch technology. So the heat pipe does span between this heatsink down to this one, and also that kind of armoured plate on the rear is definitely going to be helping act as a bit of a heatsink as well in terms of trying to bring temperatures down for any heat or temperature that goes towards the back of the board instead of actually being expelled out the top, and consequently being expelled out the back of your case through a fan configuration that you may have inside your chassis. Now, speaking of fans, we do have up to 8 PWM connectors on here, and they all are compliant with water pumps, so they just give a little bit more amperage if you need it for your specific water pump. There are strategic temperature sensors all over the board as well, around the CPU socket, on the expansion slots, and so forth. And the thing I really like about the PWM headers on here, most of them are situated towards the top of the board, with the majority actually sitting down here on this right-angled panel. So all of your connectors are actually sort of parallel with the board as opposed to sticking up, which I think is an absolutely amazing design choice, and I wish more manufacturers went with it. I'm not sure if Gigabyte have this patented or anything. If they don't, MSI, Asus, take note. Now, if you do want to push your hardware to the limits, yes, the CPU is going to be the main thing, but also memory. So this board actually supports up to 128 gig of memory of up to 5,000 megahertz memory. Now, that really does sort of scream and shout world records. So it'd be interesting to kind of see what records are going to be broken, especially with this particular motherboard. All of the memory slots do also have shielding on there to act in the same way as the power connectors to avoid interference and to give you that best kind of clean, stable performance that you can possibly get while using this motherboard. For all your storage needs, there's 6 SATA ports. Now, looking at other boards from a variety of different competitors, some of them actually have up to 8 SATA ports, so it's lacking a little bit there. But it does have 3 M.2 slots. Now, there is one board out there, the AORUS XTREME, that can support up to 4 M.2 slots, but it has to do so in conjunction with an M.2 kind of riser card called a DIMM.2. This actually has it natively on the board underneath this large heatsink area. It is also worth noting that this board is PCI Express 4.0 ready. So when Rocket Lake hits, the new CPUs that are going to be coming hopefully sometime later in the year, you're going to be good to go essentially with that processor and some blistering fast PCI Express 4.0 M.2 drives. Now, talking about expansion slots, I guess it's a little bit lackluster. You do only have X16 slots, but they're all X16 sort of size, but they do operate at X16, X8, and X4. And again, as soon as Rocket Lake hits, it's going to open up that functionality for PCI Express 4.0 bandwidth. For all your connectivity options, it has everything that you'd expect with a Z490 motherboard in terms of USB. 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C, 3.2 Gen 1, and also USB 2.0. It does have power and reset buttons directly on the motherboard, as well as a debug LED, voltage readout points, and down here, underneath this little panel, which is conveniently hidden because if you don't need to connect your front panel headers, why not hide it away? There is some BIOS switches as well. There is also an ignition switch, just in case you really want to sort of, do some overclocking and maybe you don't quite know what you're doing, this is definitely going to assist with that. Now, if you take your audio seriously, so do Gigabyte. They have an ESS Sabre Hi-Fi audio solution on here, but it comes with a little bit of an added extra. Firstly, it has support for DTS:X Ultra, and it actually comes with a ESS USB DAC. It's essentially a little USB device that can allow you to plug in analog devices that maybe they don't have the best audio quality. It will convert it from analog to digital and really give you that crystal clear quality that you've been expecting for maybe them old devices that you have. And lastly, finishing up with the rear I/O. At this price point, as you'd pretty much expect, it does have a built-in I/O shield plate that spans across from the rear I/O kind of cooler. In terms of connectivity and functions here, we have a clear CMOS button. We have Q-Flash Plus, Intel Wi-Fi AX201. It has plenty of USBs, including USB 3.2 Gen 1. It has 2.5G Ethernet. It also has 10G Aquantia Ethernet as well for them blistering fast speeds. Now, I will get to kind of the main feature of this board, and you will see maybe why it's a little bit pricey. But on top of that, we also have HDMI. We have all of our gold-plated audio connectors and optical SPDIF. Now, I did mention that this board is quite expensive for a very good reason. It has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports built in. We're talking a blistering fast 40 gigabits per second across each independent port. Now, the problem with Thunderbolt is, as far as I know, it has licensing fees on there. So that's why this board, as well as other boards from other manufacturers that do have Thunderbolt technology, they are a little bit more on the premium side because technically the brand, so Gigabyte AORUS, they have to pay that premium and, well, they've got to make their money back somehow, right? So yes, it has blistering fast speeds, but you are going to pay for it. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Like I mentioned, all of the overclocks and the benchmarks will be at the end of this video once I finish this. So let me know what you think about this. Admittedly, it's probably one of the best looking Z490 boards out there. And yeah, I think it's screaming really on the CPU and the memory for someone to get hold of it and really sort of do some extreme overclocking. Sadly, that's not really my bag. Maybe I'll get it underwater very, very soon and see sort of how far I can push things there. Other than that, enjoy the benchmarks, enjoy the overclocking, and let me know what you think in the comments section below. Until next time, you know exactly what to do, and I will see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye. Extreme!